My name is Miriam Lawson. I'm 46 years old, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. For many years, my faith was nourished by the motivational messages of a man I believe spoke in the name of God. His words gave me strength in difficult times, and his smiling face had become a spiritual reference point for me. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that autumn day. It was October 17th, 2022, and I thought I was simply attending a volunteer event. I had no idea that my life was about to be turned upside down forever. I grew up in a simple family, but one rich in faith. My father, Thomas, was a truck driver who spent long days on the road, but every time he came home, before even taking off his shoes, he would kneel to thank the Lord. My mother, Ruth, was the spiritual heart of our neighborhood. She visited the elderly, prayed for the sick, and led small prayer groups. My parents weren't perfect, but they were genuine in their love for God. I, too, tried to follow in their footsteps, even when my body began to battle an autoimmune disease that made each day a challenge. Despite it all, my faith never wavered. I found comfort in the sermons I listened to online and felt that those words lifted me. At least, that's what I believed. That morning of October 17th felt just like any other. I had gotten up early, ready to take part in a distribution of basic supplies for families in need. The sun was just rising, and its rays were streaming through the car windshield as I drove to the event. I had prayed, as I always did, asking God to use me to do good. But I had no idea that, in just a short while, the veil would be torn from my eyes, and what I would see would shake everything I had believed in up to that moment. Suddenly, everything was thrown into chaos. An oncoming vehicle lost control and veered into my lane. The impact was so violent that everything went dark for a moment. The only sounds echoing in my mind were the crushing of metal and the tires screeching against the ground like a desperate cry. My vision blurred, and my body became completely numb. In that moment, I felt my soul leaving my body, drifting into a void that seemed endless, as if time itself had stopped. I was surrounded only by darkness. I was suffocating, unable to breathe. My soul felt trapped. I was searching for a way out, but everything was pitch black. Then, from deep within my being, a scream arose. The screams echoed around me as if coming from behind the gates of hell. Desperation, fear, and profound regret engulfed my soul in that cold, suffocating void, far from God's love. Every last shred of hope in my heart was extinguished. As I drifted in the emptiness of the darkness, I suddenly found myself in a landscape that looked like hell itself. Claustrophobic walls closed in around me, trapping me as if determined to prevent my escape. With each breath, I felt a dark energy pulling at the depths of my soul, as if invisible, soul-sucking forces surrounded me. The air carried the scent of burning sulfur, just as I had heard in previous testimonies. My throat burned, and breathing was excruciating. Rivers of fire boiled with crimson lava, swallowing the scorched earth beneath. Like black holes, these rivers seemed to carry sinners with immense force, dragging them into their torment. The screams around me whispered that there was no escape from this torment. People struggled desperately in the fiery grip, their faces twisted with fear, despair, and regret. In the depths of hell, I first saw corrupt religious leaders, those who had exploited God's holy name for their own gain, now found themselves surrounded by the very sins they had committed. Like preachers to demons, the lost souls screamed their confessions. "I used God's name for selfish desires," they cried, as every word dragged their hearts into deeper agony. Their voices echoed among the stench of rotting garbage and coal mounds, ready to explode at any moment. Everything reflected pure torture. People who had pursued worldly riches, fed their greed, and distorted God's message were now trapped in these fiery pits before my eyes. Every deceitful word they had spoken out of greed transformed into flames that now consumed them. In the midst of everything, As I witnessed the hellish landscape filled with soul-crushing screams, I suddenly saw the flames around me rise higher. Out of the darkness emerged massive, grotesque demons that seized me and began dragging me away. Their claws touched my essence with a coldness that pierced deep into my soul. But it wasn't physical pain. It was the most profound regret and terror I had ever felt. I was dragged into a dark, dismal dungeon. Every wall echoed with the cries of tortured souls, and every corner was filled with boiling lava. Inside the dungeon, my hands and feet were bound by invisible chains. I couldn't move, couldn't escape, and was forced to inhale the putrid, steamy air around me. As my eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness, one of the demons approached, laughing harshly. "You are where your faith will be tested," it said. "Are you truly devoted to God? Or were you merely lured by promises of earthly happiness and security?" The question pierced my soul like a dagger, cutting into the deepest parts of my being. The demons then struck my soul with fiery whips, and each lash exposed the weaknesses of my past. I saw how superficial my faith had been, how easily it had wavered in the face of hardship. A voice echoed in the depths of my heart. "How deep is your devotion to God, truly?" In that moment, I was forced to confront the fear within me. I had always believed that my love for God was deep, but there in that dungeon, tormented and shaken, I felt how fragile, shallow, and conditional my love had been, only present in times of comfort. As my thoughts spiraled, another demon slithered closer. "You believed when wealth and ease were promised to you, but now God does not come to save you," it sneered. Those words tried to rob me of my last shred of hope. Tears streamed down my face as I bowed my head in despair. Had God truly abandoned me, or was this a test to reveal the purity of my faith? With the torment and the screams crushing me, I had to cling desperately to whatever sliver of faith remained in my heart. Was there even a fragment of God's love left within me? Bound in chains, with the demon's laughter echoing around me, I tried to pray, my voice trembling and weak. "God," I whispered, "did I truly believe in you, or did I only pray for my own comfort? Did I genuinely seek your will, or was I only chasing the happiness that was promised?" As the torture continued in that dungeon, I fought an internal battle. My faith was being tested, and I had to find the truth. At that very moment, a powerful light shattered the darkness. This light illuminated the entire hellish landscape, and it was Jesus himself. His presence brought an indescribable peace and mercy to my heart. His loving eyes met mine, and every weakness, every fear was laid bare before him. "True faith comes from self-denial and devotion to God," he said, his voice gentle yet piercing. He then spoke of the misplaced trust of how people like me had given money to religious merchants instead of caring for their own children. The wisdom and love in Jesus' eyes shattered every illusion within me. I saw the fragility of my own faith and how shallowly I had been living. At that moment, Jesus turned and looked at me, his gaze full of love, but also carrying the weight of painful wisdom. He began to critique the teachings of Joel Osteen. "They distort my true message for their own gain," he declared, his voice firm and commanding. He mentioned Luke 17:1, explaining how Osteen had taken it out of context, emphasizing personal disappointments rather than the seriousness of leading people into sin. Jesus' words resonated deeply, and the weight of the truth pressed heavily on my soul. Never before had I understood so clearly. Jesus explained how Joel Osteen's sermons often promised personal happiness and worldly success. "The gospel is not a tool to serve your ambitions," he said. In that instant, I realized how shallow and superficial Osteen's teachings were. His sermons encouraged people to focus on their own destinies rather than God's will. Jesus' words broke through my beliefs like a hammer, forcing me to confront how fragile and worldly my faith had been. I finally understood that true faith requires devotion beyond personal desires and earthly success. When Jesus said, "You have turned the gospel into a tool to serve yourselves," his words pierced my very soul. In that moment, I realized that Osteen's sermons were not about seeking God's will, but rather about encouraging people to focus on fulfilling their own destinies. Jesus reminded me of Matthew 16:24, explaining that true faith requires self-denial and devotion to God. I suddenly understood just how weak and superficial my faith had been. I had been so fixated on success and positivity that I had lost sight, the heart of God's true path. Jesus' wise words shattered the illusions within my spirit. I realized that to truly serve God, I had to let go of my selfish desires. For years, I had chased the superficial comfort and promises of worldly success that Joel Osteen offered. But now, I could clearly see that this path did not lead to God, but rather to the service of my own ego. Then Jesus criticized how Joel Osteen presented earthly wealth as God's favor. He referenced Matthew 19:23-24. "It is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." This verse made clear how dangerous and deceptive wealth could be. I realized how Osteen's prosperity messages misled people, diverting them from God. Wealth and luxury, I now understood, were perilous distractions from the spiritual journey. God values not material riches, but wholehearted dedication. Then Jesus lifted his hand, and a bright flash appeared. Slowly, I opened my eyes. When I woke up in the hospital, I felt a deep tremor in my soul that went beyond the physical pain in my body. At that moment, I knew the accident had been more than just a physical ordeal. It had been a spiritual awakening that forced me into deep reflection. I thought about Joel Osteen's messages and how devotedly I had followed them for years. Yet now, I could see the inadequacy and misleading nature of his teachings. This newfound awareness created an indescribable void within me. Returning to my life in Houston, everything had changed. I embarked on a spiritual quest, not for superficial comfort, but for a genuine connection with God. I began reading the Bible with a deeper understanding, allowing each verse to illuminate my spirit. In my prayers, I asked God to guide me and committed myself entirely to Him. I continued serving my community, but with a renewed purpose. Instead of offering superficial positivity, I wanted to share God's true message and touch people's hearts. Each morning, I made decisions with God's will at the center of my life. Where I once spoke to uplift people's moods, I now aim to convey God's love and forgiveness. My faith became more sincere, deeper, and more meaningful. While others still chased figures like Joel Osteen, I distanced myself from these flashy teachings. I knew that God called for service marked by humility, not grandeur. The spiritual awakening in my heart guided me each day, filling my soul with peace and enlightenment. Now my journey was to seek the truth that God was revealing to me. I read the Holy Scriptures with renewed depth. As I studied each verse, I felt my heart yearning to truly understand God's Word. One day, in a quiet and empty church, I knelt down. My spirit was in turmoil, and I felt an overwhelming need to surrender fully to God. With my eyes closed and my heart wide open in prayer, an indescribable love enveloped me. It was as though I was wrapped in God's embrace, and the purity and warmth of that moment cleansed my soul. At that moment, Jesus' words echoed in, "My mind seeks first the kingdom of God." This phrase brought a profound enlightenment to my heart. I deeply understood how misguided my superficial faith, worldly ambitions, and obsession with success had been. I repented to God, acknowledging all my past mistakes and the regrets I carried within me. In that moment, I truly felt forgiven and liberated. This experience gave me a new purpose. My faith was no longer just about positivity, it had gained genuine depth. Every day, I took steps with a renewed commitment to live out God's will, showing His love and mercy to those around me. This transformation brought an inner peace to my soul. My relationship with God had evolved from a superficial attachment to a profound bond of faith and love. The horror I had witnessed in hell and the spiritual experience I endured completely transformed my life. I could no longer blindly follow the shallow messages of Joel Osteen. I had realized how those teachings overlooked true spiritual depth. I then made a vow to share God's true message with people. When I returned to my community in Houston, I continued helping others with the same passion, but this time, I wasn't just spreading positivity, I was teaching them about God's genuine love and forgiveness. The changes I made in my life opened a new path for me. Where my faith had once centered on success and happiness, I now strived earnestly to live out God's will in love. Each morning, with every breath I took, I gave thanks for the second chance God had given me and prayed to keep the peace I felt in my soul. Leaving behind the mistakes and regrets of the past wasn't easy. For years, I had carefully planned for a financially secure life, managed my savings wisely, and achieved worldly success. Joel Osteen's messages had boosted my confidence and helped me build a better life. Indeed, I lived in comfort for a time, accumulating wealth and feeling secure. But that security had been based on my own efforts and material achievements. On the surface, everything seemed fine, but deep down, I had been unaware of how spiritually fragile I was. Now, guided by God's holy presence, I questioned the depths of my faith. I realized that true peace and security could only come from complete surrender to God, not from material possessions. This awareness led me to dedicate myself to enlightening others with genuine faith, not superficial promises. Each day, I grew more connected to God's love, determined to live a meaningful life under His guidance. This journey had purified my soul and bound me truly to God, teaching me that worldly riches are fleeting and the true value lies in following God's will.